What's up, guys? Rick here with your betting preview for this week's FedEx St. Jude Championship. It's outrights, it's matchups, it's one and done, it's props. Who knows where we'll go? Andy Lack joins me as usual. Andy, good morning.
Good morning to you, man. I would say I'm fairly excited for this tournament. It's obviously we got the best of the best right now outside of, the players that went to live. This is the, probably the strongest field we'll get for the rest of the year.
Yeah, everyone had to kind of earn their way into it. There will be a cut, our final cut of the season. And the top of the board, as you can see, pretty stacked. So this is the grid via odds checker. You can find the best numbers available. Rory McIlroy, the odds-on favorite. Scotty Scheffler right behind. Rory at 10-1, Scheffler at 15. You get a bunch of guys in here between 18 and 22, like Cam Smith and Patrick Cantlay. Is there a bet to be made at the top of this board, Andy?
I have foregone the top of the board, but if I was to make a bet, I probably would like JT the most. I mean, I think 20-1 on Justin Thomas on this golf course. Obviously, this is a golf course that he's won before. To me, this is a golf course that is defined by like driving accuracy and middle iron play, right? And over a large sample size, JT is still the best middle iron player in the world. He basically in the last 2 years, he's won the PGA Championship and the Players Championship. His last non-major or Players win was actually at this tournament in 2021 or 2020. So I think I would not be surprised whatsoever if JT grabbed another one here to pad his resume.
Yeah, the tournament predictor on RickRunGood.com liked him as well. Simulated this 1,000 times. He won it the fourth most often, 5.9%. The trio of Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Cantlay up top above those guys. I cannot help but notice that Jon Rahm has a 2 in front of his odds. Andy, I went back and looked and I was like, when's the last time this happened? 2019 Players Championship, he was 25-1. That's the last time he's had longer odds than what we're seeing right now.
I would imagine this is his lowest DraftKings price in a while. Yeah, I'm not surprised about the betting market number finally drifting. I mean, books where you could probably make an argument based on his play. He should have been dropped to the 20s a couple months ago, honestly, but you look at the long-term metrics and you look at the numbers, and it's so clear that he is a very, very elite player that is just consistently performing way below his baseline for quite some time now. I don't have enough interest in to pull trigger on the 20 or the 20 or the 22. I think he's going to have a really good FedEx Cup playoff. So I think if you're like making bets for somebody who is undervalued right now to win the FedEx Cup that has been performing below their baseline, I would probably bet that isn't too far away, that they're still in striking distance. I would probably bet Rahm or Hovland. I just think that for Rahm particularly, the next week's course at Wilmington is the place to play him.
The board is interesting, right? And I've kind of been burned a little bit recently by avoiding the top. Tony Finau a couple of times, Xander Schauffele a couple of times, JT Poston. I guess he was probably in the 30s when he won it. And then Tom Kim also like 30 or 35-1. But I'm going to kind of like first click. If I go to battle with Will Zalatoris, if I go to battle with Colin Morikawa right now, 25 and 35-1 respectively, I think I'd be pretty happy about that. Zalatoris, we've talked about this, Andy. I didn't think the last 2 weeks were particularly great spots for him. I think this is a much better place for him. He had a top 10 finish last year, the only time he's played at TPC Southwind. And then if you want to invest in long-term form in guys that are just like longer than they should be, Colin Morikawa does this frequently enough where he drifts to 35-1, wins, drifts to 35-1, wins. Like I'm happy to kind of invest in those guys.
Right. On Zalatoris first, like he has kind of gotten to the point where I think he's a good enough player now that we can say that he kind of transcends course fit almost, right? Like last 2 weeks, he was basically at courses that don't do the best job of accentuating what Will Zalatoris is best at, right? Which is, long iron play, powerful total driving. You want him on courses where putting is de-emphasized. And this course does a much better job of that, right? I would not call it like a Torrey Pines or a US Open setup, but you're going to have some longer approach shots here. There is less of an emphasis on putting than you've seen the last 2 weeks. We've seen Justin Thomas win this tournament before losing strokes putting. We've seen Brooks Koepka come in second, losing like 2.5 strokes putting. So of the past couple of weeks that we've seen Zalatoris, he's been playing great on courses that don't fit his game very well. This one fits his game way better than the last 2 courses we've seen. On Morikawa, I'm with you as well. I mean, that was the first bet that I made at 35-1. I think the appealing thing to me about Morikawa, it's interesting. It's such a what have you done for me lately league, and it's so tight right now with these guys at the top. I'm old enough to remember, Rick, when he won the Open Championship last year, and people said Morikawa will never drift above 20-1 in the betting markets. We were saying these things, and now he's sitting there for us at 35-1. I think it's a great course fit for Morikawa. I'm probably heavier on driving accuracy this week than most, and middle iron play than most. And, we've seen Morikawa win at a course like the Concession on Bermuda greens, where water comes into play on over 50% of the holes. I think it's a really good spot for him. So I don't think you can go too wrong in this middle tier.
The next kind of area of the board, when you start to get into the 40s to 60s, this is where everyone's just grabbing the guy that they like, whether it's going back to Tom Kim or buying in on Shane Lowry or Hideki Matsuyama or even Billy Horschel. You can kind of get whatever you want here. I always circle Victor's name. He's 40-1. I think this is a course that, again, we've talked about it. It's going to require you to ball strike the hell out of it. It's going to ask you to play out of the fairway, and it's not going to be as I don't know, requiring you to have like the great putter or the great putting week. So there's kind of a lot to unwrap in the middle. If I start my card with, as mentioned, Zalatoris, Morikawa, Victor Hovland, like I'm ready to go to battle.
I am generally not as much of a Victor guy as you are, but I am in on him this week at that number. I mean, I got him at 40-1. Let me ask you a question. What do we make of the fact that Hovland had like the best short game week of his career at St. Andrews?
Well, he got to putt. He
right. So that's counting putts off the green.
Yeah. How many times did he actually chip? I'd have to go back and look, but anything inside 40 yards that he was not on the green is around the green, and he putted a lot of that. And we've talked about this before. His putting stroke is one of the best putting strokes on tour. It's very consistent. Doesn't mean he makes a lot of putts, but like they threw him on that ping, putting stroke measuring thing, and it's like the most consistent stroke they've ever measured.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to say that this is a course where short game doesn't matter. It absolutely does, right? But we've seen him on courses before be able to find success around the green at a course like Bay Hill, right? Where there's kind of thicker Bermuda rough, right? And sometimes you could even make the case that thicker Bermuda rough sometimes level. I mean, another place was Southern Hills that had sticky Bermuda rough, and he was fine around the green there. You could sometimes make the case, not to get too into the weeds, that can level the playing field a little bit, just because you're basically sliding the club under the ball. So I like Victor a lot here. I like Shane Lowry too. I mean, I think this is we were betting this guy at 30-1 to win majors, a couple weeks ago. And now, he makes the cut on the number at Wyndham. I don't think he wanted to make the cut. He went home. He chartered a jet to get back there and had his worst putting performance in about 5 years. I think like Lowry is a pretty good buy low candidate. If we want to talk about a guy that's a great middle iron player, very, very accurate driver of the ball, really good on Bermuda, almost won the Honda Classic this year. Another course where, it's Bermuda greens and kind of trouble everywhere, and you kind of have to avoid all these landmines. I'm with you. I love this middle tier. My card this week started with Morikawa, Hovland, and Lowry.
Chartering that flight back to the Wyndham probably cost him more. Probably lost money on the weekend. T83 probably lost money there. Okay, how far down the board do we go? Because we've seen when the world's best get together, it's usually one of kind of the top elite guys that end up getting it done. Joaquin Niemann is 60. Davis Riley's 100, right? And there's not a lot of names between those two. How far down the board realistically are outrights being clicked?
Well, me, I bet a few guys at 150-1 with the each way placings. But I will say this. Let's think about Abraham Answer last year, right? Like Abraham Answer won this tournament at 45, 55 to 1. I think there are a couple players in that Abraham Answer category as a guy that is always going to check all of the boxes statistically, kind of the proverbial bridesmaid, great driving accuracy, great on Bermuda, and finally they're able to break through at a tournament like this. The two guys that come to mind when I think of, okay, who could fit that answer mold the most are Corey Connors and Russell Henley. And I actually bet both of them at 75 to 1, which I thought were fair numbers on them. But listen, how long are we going to do the this guy can't win thing, right? Is it Tony Finau winning back to back? Is that enough for people to put an end in it? Is it Xander Schauffele winning back to back for that to put an end to it? I mean, I've been banging this drum forever, but winning golf tournaments is variance, right? When I'm predicting players to win golf tournaments and making my bets, I'm not picturing who's going to hold up the trophy. I'm betting the guys that my numbers suggest have the highest probability to put themselves in the mix, right? Because I know that if I can consistently find guys that put themselves in the mix, they're going to catch the right side of variance sometime, right? They're going to finally have that day where instead of Max Homa getting up and down from a tree, it's Scott Piercy shooting a 43 on the back nine, right? So I'm probably a little more bullish on those guys like Henley and Connors this week.
Yeah, I mean, I bet Corey Connors last week at what, 30 to 1 or 35 to 1, and he had the most on-brand Corey Connors week ever, which is 8 strokes ball striking loose through with the, like, how could I be upset with that? He did exactly what you would expect him to do. So if I bet him last week at 35 and I see his name at 75 on a golf course that should be a fairly decent setup for him, like, yeah, I'm going to end up clicking his name by the time the week's over as well. That's kind of where I'm headed.
Thing I like about him too is the Sunday, right? I always try, I like looking at round by round and seeing how players progress throughout the week. And look how good Corey Connors was on Sunday.
Remember, he made the cut on the number.
Right.
T21. So he actually had a pretty decent weekend in general. He also, he go back and look at his like approaches into greens on Sunday. He missed like a 4-footer for birdie. Everything was within inside 10 feet. He didn't make anything and he still was, I don't know, a handful under par.
Right.
Matchups. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see this. I just pulled up DraftKings here. Now, are there any specific names that I can go through a couple of these, but are there kind of names that you would start circling different from outright markets, just saying, hey, this is somebody that I would like to get exposure to. I don't necessarily like it in the outright market, but maybe there are some matchup opportunities with golfer X. Is there a golfer X for you?
Yeah. Well, I just wrote this up in a golf.com piece. I slammed Russell Henley minus 120 over Ju Young Kim. Listen, if Ju Young Kim wants to gain 12 strokes putting back-to-back weeks and, have one of the best putting performances of the decade again, I am happy to take that L. I watch a lot of golf, Rick. I don't know if the numbers totally back this up. I know he was number one in the field in approach, but tracking Russell Henley on Sunday at the Wyndham, I kid you not, it was one of the best iron rounds I have seen in quite some time. I mean, he had the ball on the string. It was 3 feet, 5 feet, 7 feet, 10 feet, 11 feet, every single iron shot. I know he led the field in approach that day. I think he gained almost 4 strokes on approach that one round. So 10 times out of 10, that to me is far more sticky than Tom Kim making a ton of putts. And I think that you're getting the more undervalued player in terms of our regression candidates for next week in Russell Henley.
Yeah. If you remove kind of just like the short-term absolute scorching week or two or 3 that Tom Kim has had, the 50 round matchup has Russell Henley as the favorite here. And he gains strokes more often and gains 1 or more strokes more often than Tom Kim does. That's certainly, like Tom Kim was great, gained 12 and a half strokes. That was the 16th best putting performance ever recorded, ever. It's like 20 years of data. So yeah, might not happen again. I'll probably pick a bit on Max Homa. So yeah. Neiman over Max Homa here. I've not run the numbers, but like that's one that's interesting to me. If this golf course is a little firm, a little fast with the lack of rain that we've seen in Memphis in June and July, maybe that sets up better for Joaquin Neiman. Max Homa has been unable to solve TPC Southwind, like by far one of the best, or excuse me, one of the worst performances we've seen of anybody who's played 20 rounds at this. It just has not fit him. And I think I'll take the opportunity to kind of pick on him a little bit.
Right. I like that a lot. I was looking at, are there any matchups against Cam Smith?
So I thought I just saw one. Where are you? Maybe I didn't. Oh yeah. Okay. So DraftKings has Cam Smith minus 115 over John Rahm minus 105.
I think I probably prefer Rahm there. I mean, with Cam Smith, we're recording this on Tuesday morning. There's all this live smoke going on with him too. He's another guy that he's coming off. The last time we've seen him was when he gained 11.2 strokes putting to win the Open Championship. He has been very forthcoming about how he has been celebrating over the last couple of weeks. Rahm feels to me like Rahm's like, okay, it's put up or shut up time right now, whereas Cam might still be riding a high. I know that's not the most quantifiable way of looking at it, but I still think the thing with Cam Smith is I understand that Cam Smith was great here last year, but anytime Cam Smith plays great at a course like TPC Sawgrass or TPC Southwind, it's not because it's a great course fit. It's because he's gaining a bajillion strokes putting, right? This is not a course like St. Andrews or Augusta where he can spray it off the tee. Of course, he could still top 5 because his putter is so good. But I actually don't think this is, I think of the elite players, he is by far still the worst driver of the ball in the field. So I really like Rahm in that matchup.
Yeah. There's a big penalty for missing the fairway around here. And Cam Smith does that, as you mentioned, more frequently than most. Okay, we have to talk props and we have to talk about our one and done selections for this week. We are going to do that, but we are going to promote Andy's pod because it's awesome. Hit it. Andy Lack is not only the co-host of The Scramble, but also produces his own show, the Inside Golf Podcast. It's available twice a week, focusing on course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategies for every PGA Tour event. Admittedly, I was drawn to Andy for his data-driven approach, which you'll find on his Sunday shows as he breaks down the field. But I'm even more impressed by his passion for course architecture, which offers a different perspective of our great game. Mix those together with insightful and humorous guests who don't take themselves too seriously, and you've got a recipe for a great podcast. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts. Okay, Andy, here is the board over at PrizePicks, and you can use the code Rick. There's a link in the description. Get an instant deposit match here. They've got strokes, birdie or better matchups, and birdies or better available. The strokes I thought were interesting. 67.5 for the big boys. It's a par 70. They go down to, let's see, I think there's some 69.5. Ricky Fowler, 69.5. This golf course, and remember, we've had a regular PGA Tour event. We've had a WGC here. The most it's ever played under par is like a stroke under par on average, and often to the field average can play over par. Obviously, the big boys and the best players in the field are going to find a way to get under par, but I thought these were a little low, especially for the guys that miss a lot of fairways.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think these are a little bit low. I think 67.5. Yeah, you just clicked on Cam Smith right there at 67.5. I mean, you're basically asking the guy in his first round back after winning the Open and, over basically a month now, right? I mean, you're asking him to beat the field scoring average in like a pretty good field by 3 strokes, right? So I like, I mean, you could just do like a where there's smoke, there's fire parlay with like Hideki and Cam Smith, and you could throw Neiman in there maybe too. Yeah. Okay. Any of those guys. Yeah. I like that a lot. Ju Young Kim, again, that's another guy that I'm going to be fading all day. Jason Day, what is going on with this guy? I played Jason Day in DraftKings last week, and he was really good on Thursday. He had this really good round going. I think he gained like 2 or 3 strokes on the field. He shot -3 or -4 under, and then he withdraws from the tournament. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's a little bit concerning, right? And I don't know, I haven't heard anything this week, but right. Yeah, he was playing well. And withdrew. I don't know if it's the back acting up or what, but yeah, I've got loaded in here. Cam Smith over 67.5, Hideki over 68. Hideki's been like not very good. right? I mean, he's been good at Southwind, but you're right. There might just be this where there's smoke, there's fire type of deal. Birdies are better. The big boys are at 5. You can get Patrick Cantlay, Matt Fitzpatrick, John Rahm, and a few others at 4.5. And I mean, there's okay. How nerdy do you want to get here, Andy? We should just go for this. So
go for it.
They replaced some of the fairways with Zoysia, right? There's new Zoysia and there's old Zoysia, and there's only old Zoysia on about 5 of those fairways, which is much softer than the new Zoysia. The new Zoysia is very, very firm. And that could create a situation where more guys are playing out of the rough if the ball's running through it, especially, because they're not, they haven't had much rain. You could have a situation where fairways are harder to hit because, again, on firm and fast, things are rolling out. I think that is a little bit of knowledge that certainly PrizePicks has not worked into any of this, obviously, that I think we might be able to take advantage of.
Right. Yeah, I don't think PrizePicks is going to that level of in-depth. I agree with you. I think just like the scoring ones, these numbers feel a little bit high to me. There are not a lot of true birdie holes on this course. It's a par 70 with 2 par 5s. The par 5s are absolutely gettable, but the shortest par 4 on this course, Rick, is like 395 yards. All of the par 3s are challenging too. There's water everywhere. Like, there are not 4 or 5 clear birdie holes where you're stepping up to the tee and thinking, okay, this is one where I'm going to get one. These all feel high to me. I mean, I would go under on a bunch of these. Webb Simpson is another guy like Jason Day where I'm just like, are we done here? Like, what's the deal, buddy? Is this it? Or is it over with you, my friend? So yeah, there are a lot of guys down here that I would probably pick on and take the under with.
What I like about this, because PrizePicks is round by round, like I'm happy to you have to like play against Tom Kim in round 1. Right?
You got to.
Absolutely have to. He gains 12.5 strokes to the field. He's now like 34th in the FedEx Cup. So he's like already punched his ticket to the BMW Championship. He played, this is like the 7th consecutive week he's played. I know he's 20 and he plays a lot of golf, but like if there was ever a spot to be fading a guy in round 1, it is Tom Kim right now.
100%. Which brings me to another point that you just brought up. It's top 70 in ties that advance to next week, right?
It's top 70 of the FedEx Cup that
right.
advance.
Right.
Are you ties to make the cut?
Are you monitoring the bubble at all? Are there any big names outside of between 70 and top and 125 that, really need to make a move that you think are, going to step up based on motivation?
So I always feel like if they had the chance to flip a switch and motivate themselves, they would not wait until they are down to their last out here, essentially. So no, I generally don't, but here's the FedEx Cup standings. So 70th is Cam Davis as of right now. So I don't know. Gary Woodland 77th, Adam Scott 82nd.
He's another guy where I'm just like, I think it's time for us to go our separate ways, Adam.
I'll tell you what. I don't think he's available on PrizePicks at the moment. Steven Yeager's played really well and was awesome on the weekend. And I think he shot the round of the day on Sunday and he's 97th. So he's got a little bit of work to do. I like Yeager kind of to make a little bit of noise this week.
Yeah, Justin Rose in there too. I think at 97th, I saw his name. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think that what you're probably better suited monitoring is, can the guys in the 20 range, in the 10 to 20 range, make that move into the top 5? Can your John Rahms and Victor Hovlands and Colin Morikawas make that move into the top 5? Because as we've seen with the Tour Championship, I mean, I think it's a ridiculous format, which is a whole other podcast, but you are so far behind the 8 ball at Eastlake. I mean, you really need to be in that top 5 to really have a legitimate chance to win the FedEx Cup. Are there odds anywhere of winner of the entire FedEx Cup, by the way?
I looked for that a couple of days ago. I did not see it, and it's at least not available on DraftKings right now. I'd have to shop around.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. one and done. So from a 30,000 foot view, at this point in the season, you either have 2 events left or you have 3 events left with hopefully some type of modified scoring system for the Tour Championship. Otherwise, I guess somebody could win $18 million at the Tour Championship and just win the whole thing. So you got to be a little bit strategic here. If you've been saving golfers, you've probably been saving, I don't know, Rory McIlroy plays great here, plays great at East Lake. There's a chance you had him. There's a chance you have Justin Thomas, who obviously has won at this golf course before. If you were saving like a Daniel Berger, you don't feel comfortable with that anymore, right? So like, what are the kind of 30,000 foot view options that people might have at this point in the year?
Well, it's crunch time. Obviously, these are like the last 2 events. So I got myself right back in the money in the big one with the Cam Smith Open win. And then I went Hideki miscut, Adam Scott T37, Siwoo Kim withdraw. So I am done and out of it in the big money one. But yeah, I think I would imagine that there are very limited options left. Like I was just running through our head-to-head one and done, and I was like, wow, I really don't have that many guys left. But there's so many good players in the 40 to 50 range that I do believe can win this tournament. Yeah. But at this point, with 2 events left in the season, you just got to go through the betting markets and take the highest guy you have left, because then you're never going to, you don't want to go through the entire season and have not used Cam Smith or Scotty Scheffler or one of those guys, right? Don't you think?
Yeah. So I get messages all the time like, hey, Rick, I've got, a couple weeks to go. Like every week it's like, oh, who should I pick? Well, when we get to this point in the year, it's like I have Rory, Scotty, Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, and Xander Schauffele left. Who should I use in the next 2 weeks? And I'm like, you've screwed up. You have screwed this up. If you have those guys available to you with 2 weeks to go, you have screwed this up. So do not waste your time and energy by saving these guys. So where I'm probably headed, and where I think most are going to, you might have Shane Lowry available, depending on what you did this year. I will probably end up with like Terrell Hatton, which I think I'm fine with. He's seemingly trending in the right direction. He's played better in each of his last 3. I don't love that he sprays it off the tee, but listen, I've got limited options. And you might have like Joaquin Niemann available to you. Right.
Niemann, Billy, maybe Russell Henley, maybe Hovland if you're lucky, Corey Connors, right? Like one of those guys. I'm using Shane Lowry in our head-to-head one.
I'll use Terrell.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, just another cheeky second place finish for me again last week. We're percolating when it doesn't matter.
There is you should be using these picks somewhere else. There is a lot of money on the line though. So this is 2.7 million this week. This is one of the purses they jacked up. So 2.7 this week, 2.7 next week, and then that might be it, or that might be, you might have some big payout. So there is still a lot of money left, but you gotta, deploy your guys wisely here. Who's like the worst guy you would use? Corey Connors?
Probably Corey Connors or Russell Henley. I have each ways on like Mito and Brendan Steele. I would not use them in one and done.
Yeah, you don't need to play like Maverick McNeely here.
Although, I said that same example last week, except the player that I used was John Huh. Who was in contention from like hole 1, and somebody tweeted like, is Andy sweating don't use John Huh in one and done claims. He was my core play in DraftKings, so he was the first name that came to mind. I'm all over John Huh, but yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to use those guys.
It's always the guy that you single out that
it's
hot, or it could have been anybody. It could have been one of a dozen names, and like 11 of them missed the cut. The guy that you single out is always the one that ends up playing well. Okay. Interesting. How would you prefer? So like, the Tour Championship, what would be the ideal way to treat that? Because I get a lot of questions about, hey, I'm starting a one and done with my buddies. We hadn't discussed what to do with the Tour Championship, which again, you're doing it wrong if you haven't discussed that before the year started. But what would be the ideal way to treat the Tour Championship?
I don't think you do it. Yeah. I mean, you could get kind of funky and you could make it, you could like make the prize purse the other FedEx Cup prize purses, or even if you really wanted to, which I think creates a very like strange cloud over the whole season and changes everything strategically. Like you could just run it and say, hey, the whole point of this is you have to figure out a way to have somebody in the tour championship. And then like, some guy is playing Scotty Scheffler because they saved him, and another guy is playing like the guy who finished 30th. I'm not really a fan of that idea. It's a skip for me.
I agree. Skip it, because I think it's just, like there's only 30. Like to me, it's the field size is more of a problem than the purse size. Like there's only 30 spots. You don't necessarily know who those 30 are going to be until the week before. There's a chance you get there and don't have someone with
right.
like a little bit of bad luck and a little bit of bad planning. You might not have someone available to you. So
right.
Ignore it.
The other interesting question that I've gotten is like, for next year, I believe the way that the wraparound season works this year is the Fortinet is the first event, and then it goes to the President's Cup, right?
Yeah,
and so right, and so I think there's this impending sense of doom that after the President's Cup is going to be a bit of a Black Monday, right? So we've been having this discussion in our season-long fantasy league. Do you do the draft before the Fortinet, or do you do the draft after the President's Cup? Because what happens if your guy goes to live? And then the strategy is like, does Cam Smith become, it's like that. I think you kind of got to wait till after the President's Cup and give the axe to the Fortinet.
Yeah, it's actually not a bad idea either, because what inevitably happens is one event happens and then everyone's like, oh, I want to be in a one and done. And it's like, well, dude, you missed it. You're like a week late. Now you have to wait a year or whatever. So now it's like, oh, people will be, they'll know it's the new season. The Fortinet is almost like your grace period. And then you started at the Sanderson Farms.
Right. Or even starting in January.
Yeah, that's what most people do. Then the golf nerds start at the Sanderson Farms.
Right. We'll be chugging along through the fall swing, right?
Oh God. Yeah. No, wake up, do it another week. Nothing changes for us. Let's go.
Opportunities too. I think the books get a little bit more focused on football. I think there's some real opportunities in the fall swing.
Yeah. Okay. Andy Lack, available on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your betting preview for this week's FedEx St. Jude Championship. Good luck.